Hi, Justin Paperny with Compliance Mitigation, and I'm excited to bring to you this new case study that we're going to discuss at length today. When I say at length, maybe 20, 30 minutes, I'm going to go through this case study, offer some of my own insights and thoughts. Of course, we're talking about white-collar crime. What is it? How do these things happen? And I think this tax fraud and offshore bank account case study is really going to help us. And I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you as we continue our training. So let's go through who the intended audience is for a case study. I think that's important, of course. It's anyone who may consider taking questionable legal actions. Of course, we talk a lot about in our work at Compliance Mitigation, very few people actually wake up and say, today's the day I'm going to break the law and commit fraud and destroy my life and my reputation and potentially create victims. It doesn't really happen that way. There are some people who are aware that they may be engaging in criminal conduct and really will analyze and think it through, and oftentimes will make a decision based on the pros and cons. They'll weigh the analysis. Are others in my company, or does the culture allow it? Does my job require me to push the envelope? So there are some people who will analyze the situation, and oftentimes if the person has not cultivated character and learn to resist saying no, or if the number is big enough. For example, a number of white-collar defendants would say, I would never do that for $500 or $1,000, while others would. It's all relative. What are you earning? What are your expenses? What does it take to live? And does your job depend on closing a deal and getting creative? So when we say individuals who might consider taking questionable legal actions, it's surprising how many people know right from wrong, yet faced with a dilemma, may seize that opportunity. And as a reminder, any executive who crosses the line has seized some opportunity. We all face some pressures in life. We may rationalize those choices. Some people choose to seize criminal opportunities. And for that reason, I want you to be aware of the pros and cons of everything you do. And hopefully you don't have a number that could lead to you being bought, a number that could really imperil your reputation and everything you've worked so hard. So I'm going to transition over to this screen share now and get into some of the terms that we're going to discuss in this. Of course, for those of you in the accounting industry, this will come as easily to you as breathing. We're going to talk about the IRS, foreign bank accounts, accounting, taxes, and deferred prosecution. So here's the current state for this case study. Many wealthy individuals seek ways to shelter assets and income in order to minimize the amount of taxes they pay every single year. They may establish, in some cases, family trust and other really complicated structures in order to do this. Others are more willing to take chances in pushing the envelope, in avoiding taxes and paying money, parking money in foreign bank accounts with the hopes of avoiding discovery. In my case, I'm a former banker from UBS, and there was a case many years ago, I believe it's referenced in this case study. There was a case many years ago of UBS helping wealthy investors avoid paying taxes. And it was a huge case. A whistleblower in the case actually made, I believe, more than $100 million. And it was Bradley Birkenfeld, if I've gotten that correctly. He was the broker that was helping individuals smuggle diamonds and toothpaste from Switzerland back to America. But it was a very huge case initiated with a big, huge bank, UBS, and they paid significantly in their reputation. Used to be their stock price relative to other banks, and theirs hasn't moved. And I think it's not necessarily because of profits, but rather the reputation that comes with it. So it is not uncommon for wealthy people to consider paying or parking money overseas. In this specific case, as we get into the situation, the principals at an accounting firm in the Isle of Jersey, a crown dependent of the United Kingdom, discovered an opportunity. See, we always hear opportunity, or some people are always seeking for opportunities. Discovered an opportunity existed for advising clients about offshore banking and tax avoidance. While illegal at the time, many wealthy individuals and family regularly employed such tactics, with few cases pursued because of the complicated nature of the transactions and strict bank secrecy laws within countries. I have spoken with accountants and executives over the years who mentioned that the more complex, the more accounts that were created, the more money was moved around through corporations, the less likely the case a case would come, because the complexities of the government, while endless resources, they only have so much time. They have to allocate it properly. So the more complex, some argue, the better, making it easier to scheme and avoid paying taxes. As a result of creating these very elaborate schemes, they were able to get away with this for quite some time. In time, changes in technology eventually made pursuing the prosecution of these tax strategies more feasible. As a result, impacted countries placed considerable pressure on the countries serving as tax havens to change their secrecy laws, exposing both the tax haven providers and individuals with foreign accounts to legal jeopardy. So with bigger government comes more investigation. Right? I think it was Ronald Reagan who once said, "Hello, I'm here with the government. We're here to help." For some, that could be the worst words in the history of the English language. It could scare you. We are in a new administration, probably presume more government investigations are going to come, and things that may be illegal and not pursued or frowned upon, even though it's wrong, one day, the next day, boom, this is going to be our number one agenda. You can even look back when Jeff Sessions became Attorney General. I think there was a greater prosecution of even drugs and marijuana, which in many states like California is legal. So with new administrations, they're going to push things, create investigations where a previous one had not. And too many people have leveraged off the fact that while it may be wrong, it's frowned upon. Well, in time, as I just mentioned, with changing technology and administrations, things change. If you've defrauded people out of a government out of taxes, certain administrations are going to want that money and they're going to come. And that's just very interesting to me. The background in this case, Sachans, if I said that correctly, if I didn't, message me, let me know, began operations as an accounting and financial services firm in 1987 under the stewardship, I'm going to say, Philip E. and Philip F. They provided ordinary services at the outset, but discovered a niche in advising clients from the US, Australia, and other high tax jurisdictions on how to avoid paying taxes using complicated legal structures and offshore bank accounts. This practice was going on for decades, if not longer, yet rarely pursued by such government taxing authorities because of the complexity of the transaction. So oftentimes in white collar crime, you get away with it once. It's like, you know that it's wrong. You get away with it 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. In my story, that sort of happened, where in time it becomes normal. You've rationalized that it's normal and this is the way things work. You tend to focus on all of the other good things that you do as an executive, rather than this one bad thing that you may do. And then, of course, you rationalize it's in the interest of your client and you're delivering a creative way for them to succeed, and you're getting paid handsomely in the interim. So the longer these things tend to go on, the more people rationalize, and in time don't even view it as wrong or anything wrong with that. In this case, Sachans moved its offices to Geneva in 1999. From that time on, its principal form of business consisted of providing administration to offshore structures. This included the formation of trusts and offshore companies, administration, bookkeeping, and accounting. Okay. Strachan managed accounts for at least 60 US citizens, but the exact number is difficult to determine because of the illegal nature. The government investigators usually get all of it, but not always. This company purposely kept few records and recommended clients do the same. To effect the subterfuge of tax avoidance, Strachans devised elaborate schemes using structures which had no business purpose, served as the holders of bank accounts that in reality belonged to US-based clients. So you can begin to hear some of the machinations and structures that went into facilitating this fraud. And of course, I presume they presented it to the potential client much differently than they were doing it behind the scenes. For example, a story that's been very popular here in America is the Varsity Blues, the admissions college cheating scandal. And I know from experience in this case, the way it was presented to parents in this case was measurably different than went on behind the scenes as they were creating the scheme, or as the organizer, Rick Singer, was creating the scheme. So there's no doubt executives at this company, everything they were putting on the back end was probably sold differently to their clients. I have absolutely no doubt about that. Coming back to an example from this case, one citizen earned over $25 million in an overseas entity involved in the entertainment industry or business. The client directed the funds from that sale to go to an offshore structure set up specifically by Strachans for him. This allowed the money earned from the sale of the overseas entity to avoid paying US taxes. This company, Sachans, then invested those funds in a range of securities, stocks, bonds, options, and so on. The client then regularly accessed these funds for personal use. He acquired real estate, flew on jets, used credit cards that were owned in the name of this structure. You can begin to see how the money funnels out and kind of gets moved in myriad different directions, which makes tracing it nearly impossible, especially with their rationalization. The more complex, the harder it is for them to pursue. They have too many things, that being the government, to tend to. Sachans also facilitated one-way cash collections for its clients. In other words, clients would visit their office and pick up $10,000 in cash for each adult on the visit in order to fall below the declaration amount required in the Department of Immigration forms. The principals of Sachans then facilitated the purchase of watches, jewelries, and even cash that they would personally transport to U.S. clients. You really hear how detailed and thorough this is. Even when you're hearing $25 million, they were strategic and thoughtful enough to break it down into $10,000 increments. That shows real criminality. It shows their understanding of the laws, especially the $10,000 reporting requirement. Our team has actually worked with accountants who have sought to evade some very esoteric accounting laws, some esoteric laws of people who over a repeated period of time structured transactions just below the $10,000 to avoid it. But apparently the longer they did it, just under $10,000, and then brought them to the attention of authority. So they're always watching and they're aware of this $10,000 threshold. The point is, you're hearing numbers of $25 million, which is a lot of money, and they broke it down so specific and detailed to just under $10,000. That takes a lot of transaction to move that type of money. It just proves as they were engaged in this, they were aware of all of the laws, even though they thought it would be unlikely they would be prosecuted. They were actually like creating an insurance component if, God forbid, a prosecution or investigation came. But the strategies even became more sophisticated. There was one involving two-way cash stamps, involving brokering two-way cash stamps with the United States, whereby one client who wanted to deposit funds with Sachans would transfer funds to another client of Sachans who wanted to withdraw. With Sachans recognizing this transaction as a book entry on its record, creating one client, crediting one client and debiting the other. Again, I will always wonder to what degree they shared this with clients. Now, these clients are sophisticated. Many of them were wealthy, and one, probably turned the other way or said, "Hey, I hired you to do this to save money on taxes. This is what I've paid you a lot of money to do. Do your thing. I don't want to know everything." Some may have said that. Others may have been much more involved. But either way, their skill set, their net worth, their intellect, at some point convinced them that this was wrong. But in white-collar crime, what is it? We always have to remember this very cliched triangle, right? The pressures they may have faced. And what are some of the rationalizations why people cheat on taxes? In chapter 6 of Ethics in Motion, I share the story of an accountant in Boca Raton, Florida, who used a scheme to help his clients evade paying taxes. What was the pressure with him? Well, he would tell you, I think the government's the biggest crooks of all. I think they squander more of our tax dollars. I think it's sickening. I think I overpay on my taxes. I don't know where the money goes. It goes into some sinkhole. In fact, he said to me on that call, in the 60 minutes we'll speak on the phone today, the government will have wasted more tax dollars than whatever I did in my 3-year scheme in helping clients avoid paying taxes. I provided a service and I helped my clients succeed, pay less, keep more of the family for their money to put back into the economy. So you hear all of these, you hear the pressures, you hear the rationalizations, and of course, the opportunity. No different here. Many of these very wealthy executives or investors or clients of this firm knew what they were doing was wrong, yet it's very easy to rationalize. The government's the biggest crooks of all, and they squander more money than anyone, and why are they in a position to leverage off my hard work and what I've created? We hear it every day in our business, especially in tax cases. I think it's essential that if you're an accountant or in this industry, that you're aware of how and why people face pressures and how they rationalize them. The question is, do you seize an opportunity? It can be very elaborate and detailed like this, or it could be as simple as checking a box on a tax return that says you're a general partner instead of a limited partner, because of course a general partner may be entitled to more tax credits than a limited partner. Just that simple. And oftentimes the further removed you get from money, the easier it may actually be to cheat and engage in wrong conduct. And I just think it's essential that you're considering all of these pressures and rationalizations that you or others with whom you may work, if you have employees, in your business. Pardon my digression. I'm now going to turn my attention back to this case study. So I just said this firm would then credit one client and debit the other. Strachans employed the use of fake loans, consultancy agreements, creating dummy invoices as well, allowing clients to borrow or pay themselves from their own money in their own offshore account. To make these false transactions look real, they executed loan agreements, created contracts, and created phone service records with an overseas third-party payer. As part of its business development, Strachans representatives regularly met with U.S. clients in the United States, Switzerland, the UK, and elsewhere to discuss investment strategy and also to set up future transactions. Much of Strachans' new business came via recommendations from current clients. Makes sense, right? This firm has saved me tens of millions in taxes. Would you like to pay less? Yes. Great, hire this firm. Probably the best marketing you could ever get comes from an existing happy client. So via recommendations from current clients as a result of their impeccable attention to customer service, that also helped they were saving them a lot of money by defrauding on their taxes. While it's tough to tell the exact amount of the funds managed by Strachans, evidence made clear exceeded a few $100 million, with E and F raking in millions in fees. Strachans remained in operation until 2014. How did it come to light? Strachan's business practices first came to light as a result of legal action taken by the country of Australia against 46 Australian clients. Those clients were indicted and convicted, with many of them, including a music promoter, Glenn Wheatley, who served time in prison. Others, such as the actor Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, huge fan of the film. I remember actually going with my mom, dad, and brother, and it was a great film. I loved it. He used this big sword and knife and walked around and shaved one time with the, remember the episode of the movie where he shaved with it? Very impressive. Pardon my digression. I was just a huge fan of Paul Hogan and Crocodile Dundee. So Paul Hogan and others and his business partner, John Cornell, faced pursuit from authorities for many years. Hogan further accused Strachans of stealing tens of millions of dollars. This is what happens. That's the way these things go. If they're doing one thing wrong, they're probably doing another. And then you have one person who's doing something wrong, accusing another person. You lack credibility when you've been engaged in a scheme to evade, and then you're accusing others. It's just bad. The whole thing is just bad. We want you to avoid a hair compliance mitigation. We want you to make good choices. We want you to reward employees for doing the right thing. We want you to learn to resist temptation, to set a culture that you can follow, to reward employees for doing the right thing. We don't want you to associate with people who are doing bad and then rationalize that it's okay because the government isn't going to pursue it. In time, they might. Plus, it's going to weigh on you. If you're breaking the law, you're acting unethically, it's going to keep you up at night. You're going to wonder if you're going to get caught. You're going to wonder why you work so hard to go to college and build a business to break the law, make bad decisions. It's just bad. Learn it from me, a guy who's been to federal prison for 18 months as a result of bad decisions that I made. We serve the time so you don't have to. Please take this message to heart. We're really passionate about this because we send too many people to prison in this country. It destroys families, your reputation, your career, your finances. What if you ever lost your accounting license? What are you going to do? I'm not sure. You figure it out, but it would be hard for a while. Make good decisions, associate with the right people, learn to say no, and you're going to be in better shape. Getting back to Paul Hogan, or Crocodile Dundee, as I like to refer to him. I'll only know him as Crocodile Dundee, to be very clear to you. The parties subsequently settled that suit for an undisclosed amount. Australia also filed an Interpol red notice. That just sounds scary. Interpol, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be around it. I don't even like saying the word. They filed a blank red notice for the arrest of Stratton's owners E and F. F was captured and served 2.5 years in an Australian prison. I'd like to think in America, probably be longer than 2.5 years. While E remained on the run, is Interpol's, I said I wasn't going to say Interpol, but I said it. I'm sorry. As I's most wanted. The two also came up on prosecutors' radar in the US. No kidding. So here's the analysis. Since 1935, Switzerland has maintained criminal laws to ensure the secrecy of client relationships at Swiss banks. While Swiss law permits the exchange of information in response to administrative requests made pursuant to a tax treaty with the US and certain legal requests in cases of tax fraud, Swiss law otherwise prohibits the disclosure of identifying information without client authorization. The secrecy historically enabled US taxpayers to conceal their Swiss bank accounts from US authorities. That all changed. Remember we talked about government investigating changes with new administrations and all that good stuff? I said that like 9 minutes ago. That all changed in 2008 when the US Department of Justice opened a criminal investigation spearheaded by the IRS against UBS, my former employer, one of Switzerland's largest banks. Naturally, UBS quickly announced it would no longer accept certain US clients, and many other Swiss banks followed suit. UBS settled that case through a deferred prosecution agreement, agreeing to cooperate and provide information to authorities. That's the way it works, right? So they're happy to help you evade paying taxes, and they're collecting huge fees along the way. Then once they learn there's a Department of Justice investigation, it goes to CYA, cover your ass. Of course, we'll cooperate. Give us that deferred prosecution agreement. And whatever you need to know about our people, our clients, including what they were doing wrong, happy to provide it to you. So they're going to roll over as quickly as they can to ensure they get the best possible outcome. The government loves cooperation. They love informants. It helps them catch cases. It does a lot of the work for them. So don't think for a moment that your employer, your friend, your family, your cousin, whomever with whom you may be working, may be loyal. When we're talking federal prison and fines and sanctions, people are going to roll over, as UBS did here in this case. Oh, Bradley Birkenfeld, with whom I mentioned earlier. In 2009, a court sentenced Bradley Birkenfeld, a former UBS banker working in the US, to 40 months for playing a central role in such tax avoidance schemes. A few years later, prosecutors charged 3 UBS bankers with conspiring to hide more than $1.2 billion in assets from tax authorities on behalf of US clients. They pled guilty in October 2020 from their residence in Austria, and potentially face a similar result. Okay. In 2009, the IRS made collecting taxes from overseas accounts directly or indirectly owned by US citizens a top priority. See how things change? Suddenly that's a top priority. Well, the economy was in the toilet. We're in a recession. They're looking to capture revenues from those who previously they had ignored. That's just the way it works. They provided amnesty. I say they, the US government, provided amnesty through an initiative appropriately called the Swiss Banks Program. The initiative was created in recognition of past law enforcement, a recognition of past lax enforcement, hard to say, lax enforcement, and available to all US citizens who came forth and reported their holdings. While not exempt on the taxes owed for that money, these individuals could avoid fines, penalties, and potential prison time for voluntarily reporting. This program ended in September 2019 with more than 56,000 taxpayers having fessed up to owing overseas accounts, forked over more than $11 billion in taxes, interest, and fines. Many people nonetheless chose not to report, hoping to slip through the crack. E engaged US counsel and made a voluntary approach to the Department of Justice in 2014. He conducted an internal review of the records Stratch retained in order to identify and collect data and information regarding its US taxpayer accounts. E reported his findings to the DOJ, providing documentation supporting those findings. Stratch also assisted the DOJ in preparing treaty requests under the convention between the US and Switzerland to help identify the US taxpayer accounts at certain Swiss banks. Wow, that's a lot to take in and digest. Let me summarize it for you in about 12 seconds before I continue. Associate with good people, do not succumb to opportunities, do not break the law, do not act unethically, because if you do and you get away with it once or twice, it's very easy to go down this cliched, slippery slope. I can assure you all of these executives, E and F, did not begin their career in this business to help US or international people avoid paying taxes. They seized an opportunity, they took it, they got away with it, and they got referrals and grew their business. Eventually, it all comes crashing down, I assure you. E nonetheless remained. So his co-defendant, his friend, began to make better decisions, okay, as I understand it. He continued, so even though he engaged US counsel, he remained on the run as Interpol's most wanted. Authorities in Italy eventually picked him up at a hotel based on a tip. An Italian judge, however, ruled too much time had passed now to honor the Australian request. We actually had a client like this a few years ago in Italy. It was a very interesting case. A very favorable judge essentially said the same thing. He came to the United States in 2020 to settle his legal issues. He accepted a guilty plea on behalf of Stratton's, now no longer operating and in liquidation, in exchange for an extremely lenient $500,000 fine in recognition of the significant cooperation provided. They love cooperation, right? They love cooperation. They love it. They love it. They love it. I mean, there have been cases of murderers who have cooperated, like Sandy the Bull Bravano, killed people, admitted it, cooperated, it got 6 years in jail. There are white-collar defendants who defraud the IRS who get 8 years and 10 years in jail. They didn't kill anybody. What does that mean? They're big fans of cooperation. Keep that in mind. If you or anyone you know, God forbid, ever gets into trouble, the first thing you should do if you did it is run, not walk to the U.S. Attorney's Office to articulate what you did. Because if you wait and you go too late, they may say, great, happy to work with you, happy to help you. You have no cooperation left to give us. We have everything we need. He still remains a wanted man in the country of Australia. Stratton's former clients who did not voluntarily come forward under the now expired Swiss bank program certainly remain at extreme risk of fines and potential prison time, in part because they're engaged in kind of like, well, white-collar crime. What's fascinating is once someone does something wrong and people find out about it, some people really come clean, own it, address it, stop it. Some continue the criminal conduct, like avoiding authorities. And there's a thing called post-defense conduct. What do you do once you're caught? A lot of people, like Martha Stewart, went to prison for her post-defense conduct. She lied to the government. Yours truly, hi, I'm Justin, the one giving this presentation. I lied to the government. It's really the primary reason I went to jail for 18 months. If you're going to speak to the government, tell the truth. If you've made bad decisions, own it. Don't cover it up. That's the only way you're going to make things better. Or you can live like an ostrich with the head in the sand and pretend this isn't happening. It'll eventually comes undone. In fact, our team is working with someone who was indicted in 2013, fled the country for 6 years, is finally coming back. And I said, they never found you. They didn't even come after you. Why? And he's like, it's just on my mind 24 hours a day. For 6 years, my prison term would have been over and done with. All I do is think about the fact that I ran. At some point, I may get caught. And this is like a life sentence, even though I was living outside the country. So you may get away with it for a while. If you don't get caught, unless you're a sociopath and nuts, it's going to be on your mind. It's going to hold you back. You're going to pay a price for it somewhere. Keep that in mind. Please keep that in mind. Recommendations. Law enforcement constantly sets and changes. See a little typo here in this case study. Don't hold it against us when we ask you to leave a review. Please, it's just one typo. There's an extra A there. Please. Law enforcement constantly sets and changes priorities for a number of reasons. Enforcement may change even as the laws remain the same. It could arise from political pressure, a spate of certain type of fraudulent behavior, or in this case, it was a change in technology. Just because law enforcement accepted certain legal practices in the past, within a wink and a nod and kind of turning the other way, doesn't mean they're always going to do that. Anyone engaging in illegal business practices not currently enforced bears the risk that enforcement may change like in a moment's notice. You getting the snap? Like it's just like that. That's how quickly it could change. With new administrations, with big government, it's happening. Naturally, the best way to avoid consequences from breaking the law generally means not breaking the law at all. Please consider the risks before pursuing any strategy, and take it from me, 2020 hindsight is a painful way to learn a lesson. Yes, it is. I learned a lot of these lessons from the long side of prison boundaries, and our company at Compliance Mitigation has worked with more than 1,000 white-collar executives, preparing them for prison, and all of them would wish for a do-over, would wish for an additional opportunity to make things right. In a retrospect, would have given more thought to how their actions influenced their life that day, and given consideration to how it would influence their life in 5, 10, 50, 100 years after they've dropped dead and they're gone, how their actions would influence their children and their kids' kids and their kids' kids' kids. You get it? Think about legacy. Think about reputation. Think about what it really means to have integrity, what it means to be authentic. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Put your family first. And if you can do that, you won't make short-sighted decisions that could derail the life you're meant to live. I've said previously, I spent my 30s making up for terrible decisions in my 20s. It's 2 decades. Learn from us. The future state, the US, and numerous other countries began strongly cracking down on tax avoidance via offshore bank accounts in the mid-2000s. These countries placed tremendous pressure upon formerly popular tax havens such as Switzerland and the Isle of Jersey, threatening removal of banks in those jurisdictions from the international banking system. Those banks slowly complied over the course of a few years. They're kind of stuck in their ways, so to speak. Enough pressure is going to get them to change. And in so doing, they put their clients at huge risk for large monetary penalties and potential time in prison. Wow. Well, I'm super grateful, of course, that you allowed me to go through this 30-minute case study. I said 20 to 30 minutes, so I'm within the range here. To close, nobody wakes up and says, today's the day I'm going to ruin my reputation, break the law, and help my clients cheat on their taxes. It doesn't really work that way. It's facing some pressures to make more money, to be appreciated, to get a raise, to get a promotion, to get more likes on Facebook about that raise or promotion. Not a huge Facebook guy here. If you find me on Facebook, Justin Paperny, love to connect with you. Probably see photos of my young kids. Let me get back to this for a moment. understand the pressures you face, think how you may rationalize them and the difference between you and me. I seized an opportunity that led me to prison. The people in this case study seized an opportunity that led them to evade the system for many years, eventually cost them a reputation, prison, and a whole lot of fallout that accompanied trying to grow their business in a deceptive and criminal way. Again, if you have questions, please reach out to our team at Compliance Mitigation. I am Justin Paperny, your instructor, and I look forward to returning soon with more valuable content. Thank you again. Bye-bye.